Welcome, everybody, to episode 1 of Chris and Harry Unplugged. My name is Harry Sisson.
I'm Chris Mowry. A lot of people here may know us from TikTok or Twitter, where we post quite a bit about being Gen-Z Democrats. We thought we'd start a podcast, make some longer form content. A lot of people think we're shills or we're paid, etc. And we think this would probably help that narrative and help us come across more genuine and authentic and kind of break down longer form ideas as opposed to a 30-second or minute TikTok.
Yeah, and we really enjoy like longer conversations. We have them pretty frequently off camera. We also do like TikTok lives and Twitter spaces where we talk to people who disagree with us. But yeah, we thought this might be a good way to engage with different ideas. And on this podcast, we're going to be breaking down relevant news, having guests on who we agree with and disagree with. We're also going to have some fun segments that you'll see in coming episodes. We're still kind of trying to figure everything out. This is only episode 1. And we're just kind of going with the flow right now.
Exactly, yeah. And so I guess a couple more things. I know episode 1 looks a little funky. We decided that Monday, July 3rd would be the date we release it. We may have not been prepared for all the things that go into creating a podcast. But we promise episode 2 and going forward will continue to look significantly better and sound better as we go on. Also, we created an email where you can email questions, or if you want to be on the podcast for whatever reason, you have a question you want us to answer, literally anything. I'll put that up on the screen. I believe it is CMHS Unplugged. Or no, I'm sorry. It's questions at cmhsunplugged.com. Again,
that's right. Questions
at cmhsunplugged.com. We'll have it up. You can email us anything. Mostly like questions though, and we'll just like try to respond, or if you have a question for us. Yeah. So I think if we want to go ahead and dive right in, why not, right?
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about some Supreme Court cases today with relevant things like that. I'd also like to talk about a little about the Trump rally that was in South Carolina today, specifically a specific moment, but we're going to get to that at the end of the episode. However, I would like to address the elephant in the room. My barber scuffed me, folks. My barber scuffed me. People are saying...
Yeah, dude, his barber did him dirty. He wanted to record the first episode of The Hood or a hat. I said, Harry, dude, you just gotta let it ride, buddy. You just gotta let it ride. You just gotta let it ride, man. The DNC doesn't pay for good haircuts. He has to go to He had to go to Supercuts. Please tell me, do you go to Supercuts? You don't go to Supercuts.
No, of course I don't go to Supercuts.
Thank God.
No, I went to I said medium length, and they just went at it. And I saw
Bro,
my
that is definitely
today.
Not medium length.
It's definitely not medium length.
That is far away from medium. That is extremely short length.
It's extremely short. I don't know what they were thinking when I saw my family today for the first time in a while. They were like, "Wow, are you a Marine now?" I said, "No, of course." So I wanted to address the elephant in the room.
Is the barber like a big MAGA guy? He's just like
maybe he's a MAGA guy. Actually, maybe he's a MAGA guy trying to sabotage. He's trying to make me look
like shit.
Anyway, look like shit, exactly. But regardless, wanted to address the elephant because people see me with long hair all the time. Anyway, let's dive into these Supreme Court cases because they're important. There have been a bunch of Supreme Court cases recently, but some of the ones that are talked about in public the most have been the affirmative action case, the student loan forgiveness case, and then the final one where a website designer in Colorado didn't want to make wedding websites for gay couples, and they ruled in her favor.
Right, and that case didn't even actually exist. Let's
start there. Actually, let's start with that case.
I don't think, my understanding is that they ruled on a case that was hypothetical.
That's right. She made I think it was back in 2016. She made a claim to the courts in Colorado saying like, "Oh, this gay couple asked me to make a wedding website for them, but I'm religious. I don't want to." And the court was like, "These people don't exist. Like they're not actually like a gay couple. They're not real. They're not asking for a website." And funnily enough, one of the guys who was cited in the lawsuit didn't even know his name was attached until now.
That's
like after the Supreme Court case. And he's like, "Yeah, I have a wife and kids. I'm not gay, and I never asked for a wedding website."
That's so crazy.
And this claim managed to make it all the way up to the conservative Supreme Court, who thought, "Yeah, let's rule on as you said, a hypothetical. It doesn't exist. This never happened."
Yeah, and I think although like a lot of these SCOTUS decisions are obviously like very complex. Neither of us are lawyers. We try to give, the general input as we can and try to like learn more as we go, actually like read the SCOTUS cases. But for now, I think, the general idea is that we're stepping backwards in a lot of senses. Roe v. Wade was a precedent for, 50 some odd years. And now we're, I guess legally certain businesses, not all businesses, it's complex, but certain businesses can discriminate against LGBTQ individuals. And as we, move forward and talk about the other ones, the other cases, I mean, it's clear that elections have consequences. This is if Hillary would have won in 2016, we probably would not be having any of these discussions. Our Supreme Court would look significantly different.
It's just I think it's a little scary. I mean, you and I are not members of the LGBTQ plus community, but kind of looking at how these cases have come about in recent years is pretty terrifying. I mean, we had Roe, which, as you said, overturned like 50 years of precedent. And then everybody on the left was like, they're going to go after gay rights next. And, Clarence Thomas in his opinion was like, yeah, I think that the Obergefell, the case that legalized gay marriage, should be looked at again. And everybody's like, oh, they're going to come after LGBTQ plus rights next, and people were calling us hyperbolic. They were saying we're dramatic, and then a year later,
here we are.
You can discriminate against gay people.
Right, exactly.
Right.
A lot of it's the same from the right and the left. A lot of people, further left than us said that nothing major changes in these elections. I'd rather go for a more a very progressive viewpoint, which is fine. But it's still important to remember that these elections have consequences. We voted in Trump, and here we are. And even people on the right, like you said, they said, well, abortion's one thing, but they wouldn't go after anything else. Well, like you said, here we are, and who knows what's next? I think you've opened up a can of worms. I think we heard someone talk about it last night on a Twitter space. What's next? Are we going to start ruling on whether you can, you don't like people with disabilities, so you can, kick them out of your place of business? What's
right.
We're going backwards. We're going backwards.
And what's a little scary, especially I think for the Gen Z voters, is that we just learned today that for the next term, the Supreme Court has agreed to take up a case regarding domestic violence abusers being able to own firearms.
Wow.
So in many cases in many states, like I think even the majority of states, or the overwhelming majority of states, domestic abusers can't get firearms because it's one of the main uses or main weapons that abusers will use against their partners to kill them or hurt them badly. Which makes sense. It's like, someone who's convicted of domestic abuse probably shouldn't be in possession of a firearm, but now the Supreme Court's looking at that and seeing if maybe they should.
Wow, I actually have heard nothing about that. That's fascinating. I did not know that.
Hasn't been covered all that much. We'll get a decision at some point, but yeah, I mean, anyway, I don't want to dive too much into it, but the domestic violence statistics with guns is really terrifying. So if it were to be constitutional for those types of people to own firearms, that'd be pretty damaging, I think, for a lot of people.
Right, I agree, and I think that goes into, like you said, you were talking about Gen Z. I think us being in Gen Z, these SCOTUS rulings have a lot of weight for 2024. I think out of any generation, I think 20 some odd, it's a pretty high percentage, 15. Don't quote me here, but 15 or 20% of Gen Zers are in the LGBTQ plus community, and obviously a significant amount more. I can't speak. A lot of Gen Zers support the LGBTQ plus community, so SCOTUS rulings like this, if someone can look objectively and say, it's a very conservative court, may sway voters in 2024. And I think that kind of actually transitions pretty well into talking about the next SCOTUS case, which is student loans.
Student loan forgiveness. Yeah.
Right.
Tough case. Tough decision for the Biden administration. We were, I remember reading about their arguments, back in the fall when it was being made, and they were citing the HEROES Act, and it seemed pretty good to me. I think the arguments were really strong. So I was actually kind of surprised by the ruling. I know that it's a conservative majority, but I thought that the arguments were really strong, and so did the Biden administration. I mean, we've heard from them time and time again, like, we're confident, we'll have it our way. But it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate to say.
Right, exactly. And I think, I think you and I have talked about this extensively, that, there's obviously a need for a longer term solution. But this student loan problem is bubbling bad. And it's I talk to a lot of people where it's dragging our economy down. A lot of these borrowers, I've read statistics, if you're in more than $30,000 of student loan debt, you're 11% less likely to start a business. 1 in 10 of those people said they haven't bought a car. You're 36% less likely to buy real estate. I mean, this is your local economy and your national economy. So it's affecting everyone. We need to find a solution on that, but it's unfortunate that we couldn't, at least alleviate it slightly.
Yeah, and as you said, it's a very complex issue, student loans, because there's so many layers to it. There's so many problems to address. So I really like how the Biden administration was trying to address the current crisis where, just trying to give people a little bit of breathing room.
Right.
10,000, and if you get Pell Grants, 20,000. But obviously that doesn't really get to the source of the issue, but that would need to go through Congress.
Right. And I think, some of the sidestepping that's being done now, although I'm not super familiar with still understanding what the Biden administration is doing further, but I understand that, for an extended period of time, now I think if you pay your student loans, because a big problem a lot of people are having is that they can't actually attack the principal. The interest rate is so high. It's so much that like a lot of people come out of college with $100,000 in debt, and 20 years later their principal balance is $125,000 because they literally can't attack the balance. It's insane. I think they're trying to sidestep and move towards something where as long as you make a payment, your principal can't rise at least for some 18 months or so. There's still steps to alleviate that pain, but there needs to be a longer term solution. So
yeah, and it's tough, and I think tackling the root of the issues, through Congress would be great. I think attacking these predatory loans, the really high college prices. I don't know how you go about that. You could maybe talk about funding or having a cap on tuition. And things like that. I think if you go to those root of the issues, and then of course the existing crisis, kind of tackling those three things at once would be really beneficial. But I don't see MAGA Republicans joining forces anytime soon.
Right, exactly.
So it's tough.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, that's why 2024 is important. You should go vote.
You should really go vote.
You should
go vote.
You should vote.
Vote blue specifically.
Vote. So yeah, and then the last case. So we did the business, the LGBTQ plus student loans. Affirmative action. Yeah, the affirmative action case is very, very, very complex. I actually asked a friend of a friend of a friend of a dog of a friend, who has a lawyer, who's an attorney who likes to read SCOTUS cases, likes to read SCOTUS cases. So I actually was like, give me your thoughts because I'm not a lawyer. I'm 21. I'd like to actually spend time reading it and understanding it, because I understand that it's complex about how the colleges will be able to move forward on affirmative action. I think you have more insight into that than I do.
Well, yeah, in the first time we tried to film this,
that never happened. I don't know what you're
Oh, yeah, sorry, that never happened.
This is the first time we've ever recorded ever.
Yeah, that's definitely not an attempt before this. But in the attempt that doesn't exist, I was talking about this case I learned about in my U.S. Constitution class that deals with affirmative action. It's Regency v. Bakke. It was in the 1970s, I think the late 1970s. And basically this white applicant, Bakke, was applying to a medical school in California, and he was rejected twice. And that school accepted 100 people, but they reserved 16 spots specifically for people of color and minorities. And Bakke sued, saying that he was discriminated against racially, and that lower the applicants with less of a resume, lower grades, kind of all across the board, were getting accepted just because they were people of color over him. And that was the claim he made. And he actually had some success in the Supreme Court, but not all the way. They found that a quota system is unconstitutional, that you can't have reserved spots. But they did find that considering race in college applications is constitutional, and that it can be one of the many factors. However, it has to be specifically tailored to the goal of diversity. So you can't just be like, oh, well, I want to accept this person of color over this white person because they're a person of color. It has to be achieving diversity, and it has to be a holistic approach. It just can't be race or grades. It has to be kind of everything combined at once to lead you to a decision to admit that person. So in using that Supreme Court case, it was written by Justice Powell at the time, or that's kind of like the opinion that kind of represents that case is Justice Powell. I think that's a fair ruling. I tend to side with that ruling as in the affirmative action discussion, because I do think there is certainly a university interest in wanting diversity on campus and having different experiences and people from different backgrounds.
Right. Yeah, and I talked to you about this on the episode that we didn't record. Yeah, but there's many studies and statistics that go into having more diversity in a workplace or a higher education anywhere that lead to better outcomes for everybody in terms of literally stuff as simple as happiness or productivity, etc., because diversity is good. So yeah, complex, but hey, I think that sums it up right there. Diversity is good.
Yeah, diversity is good. And the frustrating thing about the dialogue on social media after the affirmative action case was that a lot of conservatives, a lot of people on the right just thought affirmative action was accepting people of color because they're people of color. That's the only reason, and that, basically, Harvard's looking at a person of color's application and a white person's application. They're just picking the person of color because they happen to be that. But it's not. It's like a holistic kind of looking at everything at once. And so that's why it's, I don't think it's fair to characterize it as like a racist policy or racist against white people or anything like that.
It's definitely,
And it's far more complex than just like a one word.
Right, exactly. Yeah, definitely not a racist policy though. I think that's that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but anyway, we won't get too much into the weeds on that topic because again, we're not lawyers. Super complex.
Learning more.
Learning more as we go.
That's the key. Yeah, the key here is not to scream and yell about an opinion. The key is to just even if we tell people all the time on TikTok or Twitter, people ask me a question. How do you feel about this? I say I'm still deciding how I feel about that. Got to take in a lot of factors, and one of those important factors is that SCOTUS ruling is long and complex, and I am 21 and not through school yet, and I'm not a lawyer, so still learning. But,
Still learning. So those are the SCOTUS cases. Those are kind of in the news.
Yep.
But the last thing I wanted to talk about and bring your attention to, Chris, is this today in South Carolina, Trump had a rally.
Right. So I actually haven't looked at this much because I don't know. I don't look at Trump rallies. They make me. I mean, when I have to hear Donald Trump speak, it's like it's the most brain-numbing thing. I don't know if that's the right term, but listening to Donald Trump try get through even a minute. I think when I first started Twitter, probably 5, 6. It's probably been 8 months now.
Yeah.
I sat down. Oh no, actually I don't know. When did Trump announce he was running for president in 24?
The month after the midterms, December.
Yeah. So I sat. That was right when I had started social media. I sat down and I watched that entire speech, and I'm telling you, an hour 10. Oh, dude, it's so mind numbing. The guy is just. I won't even. Anyways, so I don't know. All I know is that people were lining up. Is it true that people were sleeping there?
5 a.m. people were there. People were sleeping overnight to go to this Trump rally.
Yo, if you're out there in South Carolina, please know Chris Mowry loves you, and he wants you to vote blue. He wants you to vote blue.
Yeah.
Please vote blue.
South Carolina, we love you as a state. We love you.
I love you. I'm in Georgia.
That's a little crazy.
I'm in Georgia. I'll vote blue too. We're neighbors. Anyway, so 5:30. So what did he say? What did you want to bring my attention to?
So, Trump did his usual crap and, his rambling. And as you said, some of the hand motions. He did his usual thing. I did nothing wrong, and the documents were mine. And he went, Joe Biden's this, Hunter Biden that. But one moment I thought specifically was interesting in the Trump rally was Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who is big MAGA. He's a big supporter of Donald Trump. Yeah. Got booed by the crowd throughout his entire speech. He got booed entering, and throughout the entire speech, the crowd kept booing because they considered him a traitor to the MAGA movement. And maybe if we're feeling feisty, we'll put the clip right here.
Yeah, dude, just throw it up.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a bunch. Well, you want to find something in common?
I have not seen that clip, so that'll be the first time, or after I get off, I'll look. I mean, dude, that's just ridiculous. It's. I don't like to use the term "these people." That's not appropriate. We're all Americans. I mean, dude, it's just getting more extreme and extreme and extreme. I mean, if you're not on your knees praying to Donald Trump, you're out. You're just horrible. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I mean, someone like Lindsey Graham,
how is he not
so Trumpy?
Yeah, what's I don't understand.
I don't know either. I genuinely this guy used to be great friends with President Biden. He called President Biden one of the nicest before he was president, one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. And then since his presidency, he's totally flipped on him. Right. He's gone full Hunter Biden, full Biden's an awful person. I mean, he's doing Donald Trump's bidding in the Senate.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing that I tell people all the time. I make this joke that, if the Republican Party has shifted so much. And I think it's harder for you and I to comment on because, if I'm 21, I was born in 2002. Obama was, inaugurated in 2009. And, so it's this shift of the Republican Party toward this MAGA, very extreme, just bizarre, just absolutely bizarre. Hasn't, we haven't quite seen all of it, but a lot of these people who are like standouts in the Republican Party, like if you don't support Trump wholeheartedly and say out of your mouth, like everything. I know Lauren Boebert on Twitter has like the 45 hat. I mean, you have to be obsessed with him. You have to literally be obsessed with him. It has to be half your talking points are about Donald Trump. But yeah, if you don't do that, I say you get sent to the Republican dungeon. That's what happens. The Republican dungeon.
You never, a rhino.
Yeah, if you're a rhino, it's the Republican, because genuinely a lot of these people who are like big names in the Republican Party that just absolutely just disappeared. No one knows where they are. I haven't seen them in months. I'm like, you got sent to the dungeon, buddy. I don't know where you are.
You got sent to the Republican dungeon.
And Lindsey Graham's headed there if he's not careful.
Like, dude, it was anyway. I'll send you the clip after, and we'll take a look at it. But booed throughout the entire speech, and at the end of his speech, he said, "Thank you," slammed the podium, and walked away.
Wow.
Just and he was like. He was really bad. Yeah. But it just goes to show you, like, you're right. Like, the MAGA Republican Party now is so delusional that even someone like Lindsey Graham and people were screaming traitor at him.
That's
traitor.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, Trump. I can't believe people. It's getting scary. The idea. I mean, I try not to look at poll numbers because we're really far away. But man, it's like. I mean, I was always under the impression, I've said this many times, that the indictments, so where we have cases in New York now, he's obviously been hiding nuclear secrets at Mar-a-Lago and showing classified documents. I think, after the audio tape was in the indictment and we actually heard it, it's a pretty damning case for Donald Trump. I was always under the impression that it would help his poll numbers, but, I think a lot of people misrepresent that I don't care. People like you and I don't care that it helps his poll numbers because he should be held accountable for being one of the biggest traitors in American history. Yeah. But yeah, it's scary stuff. I mean, I woke up today on Twitter to, people lined up or I guess walking in a huge line at 5 a.m. And they were like, they were sleeping there. I'm like,
and you're right. Like, we're, I don't even know how many months, like 16 to 18 months away from the 2024 presidential election. So polls don't really matter. I mean, I think in the 2008 election, Rudy Giuliani was leading the Republican field at that time. Right. And then he obviously wasn't the candidate. So it doesn't really matter. But, seeing Biden like up like 1 or 2 in some of these swing states or, only like 3 nationally, super concerning. Not because I think Biden's going to lose. I think he's going to win. But the fact that Donald Trump still has that much support.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I'm curious, I'll let the justice system, play out however it plays out. If he's, point being, regardless, before I get into like a whole like thing that I don't need to go into, I just don't understand how this guy is going to run for president. I mean, look, like, I'm in Georgia, right? Shout out to the Peach State. I'm in Georgia, so we've got an indictment coming in August. Like by Fannie Willis in Fulton County, it's where I am. Like it's over, right? I assume there's an indictment coming there because I mean this guy he just commits crimes everywhere he walks. An indictment's coming in Fulton County. There's indictments in New York. Now we have indictments for Mar-a-Lago. I mean, this guy is gonna have to run for president and be in a courtroom every day in fucking 3 different states,
dude. And the bad thing about it is, like, for him. It's not even just the criminal cases. He has civil cases against him from the new E. Jean Carroll. There's another E. Jean Carroll defamation. There's a Trump Organization one coming up. So, like, I was reading an article from the Rolling Stone, and in, like, the crucial 4-month period from, like, January 2024 to, like, June 2024, crucial moment of campaigning, especially in primaries, he's going to be in and out of courtrooms every day of his life.
Exactly. That's exactly the thing that, like, people are I mean, that's a fantastic point. That's what people are missing that I say all the time. They're like, it's going to help his poll numbers. I'm like, that's great. I don't know how he's going to be in New York unless he can, teleport. I don't know how he's going to be in New York, Georgia, South Florida, every single day and go and campaign. He's just got to. I don't know. I don't understand.
And to be honest, like, I think the important thing here is that in my view, it's going to help his poll numbers in the Republican Party. But I think that, like, independent voters, independent Americans, are looking at these cases against Donald Trump, which we haven't seen all the evidence in any of them.
Right.
And they're thinking this guy is disgusting. He's a traitor. It's so his crimes are so blatant and egregious that I struggle to see why independent Americans would vote against Donald Trump in 2020 and then see these indictments and be like, oh yeah, well I think I should support him now in 2024.
Right, exactly. No, I agree, because obviously that's the independent voters, whether they swing to a third party or don't vote or whatever, are going to play a massive role in 2024 if it's going to be so razor thin. So I think that's a fantastic point. Like, even if the poll numbers in the Republican Party grow for Trump and they're all behind him, what the crucial votes, I'm not sure, looking at Joe Biden and his potential weaknesses even then can outweigh Donald Trump, facing 150 years in prison and paying $5 million in a liable for sexual abuse and defamation and, just all the madness that comes along with Trump. And I think even some of I'm not super convinced that he'll continue to be, he's pretty solidly the Republican nominee, but I think there is a lot of people even in that base who you can see Donald Trump as he's getting closer to his inevitable demise, this is all going to fall apart for him, whether that's, behind a jail cell or just not in politics or whatever, just crumbling in legal madness. A lot of people in the Republican Party are just, it's becoming clear that Trump is doing this for himself. I listened at CPAC, I listened to someone go around and interview people, and, it was pretty decisively Trump when they did the vote. 70% or so of people there voted that they wanted Trump as the nominee. But a lot of these DeSantis people were like, yeah, I like Trump. I like what he does. And now this has all just become about him. He wants me to vote for him so, because the DOJ did him wrong. Well, I don't really care. You're supposed to be fighting for me, not himself. So I think that's an interesting thing to watch out for, but we'll just see.
Yeah, as we get closer to 2024, it's really not that far away in hindsight.
No, it's not.
Like I think the first Republican debate is in August, and the primaries will be happening like a month away, sort of. Like the primaries will be happening throughout this year, and I know you and I will be in contact a lot about this stuff as we lead up to 2024. It's not that far away, but it's super interesting to pay attention to. But yeah, that's just the MAGA cult persists.
Persists, right? Exactly, and I think. Yeah. I think with that, we're at about 30 minutes. We can go ahead and call it an episode 1. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that was
solid. Yeah, so just like a couple things, like I said, you guys can email. The email again, it's questions@cmhsunplugged.com. We'll try to get to a lot. I know a lot of people are going to ask us about the other Democrats in the field, which we're more than happy to talk about. I think that'll be a really good one. A lot of people are curious about our thoughts there. And yeah, you can email us whatever. Again, this first episode was like a little bit shorter, 30 minutes. We're just like testing some stuff out. I know it's not, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're on Spotify, whatever, I appreciate you a lot. I know it doesn't look the best. We are going to consistently, like every week, spend a lot of time making sure this grows and ends up being like something very professional and something we really like. And if you have any suggestions on who you want on the podcast, or you want to come on the podcast yourself, you shoot us a DM on Twitter. I'm going to flood your Twitter DMs here. Shoot us a DM on Twitter, email us, and yeah, I think that's about it. And again,
I think that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a Gen Z American and you don't know much about politics, I love you. You should make an informed decision, and I think the informed decision you should make is voting blue.
Vote for Joe Biden and Democrats all the way down the ballot.
Vote for. All right, I think we'll call it there. We don't even have an outro yet. I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching.
Tune in for episode 2 on.
We're figuring that out.
In a couple days. I love you all. Goodbye.
In a couple days.